Hello, everyone. Welcome to Revolutionizing Tomorrow, Biomedical Materials and the Future of MSE. This is the fourth and final installment of the four-part outreach webinar series organized by the Department of Material Science and Engineering at NUS. I'm Anna, and I will be your host for today's session. Consistently ranked among the top globally by Times Higher Education and QS, MSE at NUS has made extensive contributions and breakthroughs in education, innovation, and research, clinching numerous awards both locally and globally. With cutting-edge research in areas such as advanced manufacturing, bio-inspired materials, edge computing, and computational material sciences, as well as world-renowned faculty members such as Professor Sir Konstantin Novoselov, Professor Antonio Castroneto, and Professor John Wang, it is unsurprising that MSc at NUS is one of the leading MSc departments in Asia. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce the Outreach webinar series. As part of the MSc Roadshow, this four-part series is organized with the aim of raising awareness and showcasing the diverse roles and career opportunities available to MSc graduates. Over the past few weeks, several distinguished speakers from various fields gave a talk on the career pathways they have embarked on. The webinar will be split into two parts. The first will be the talk by invited speakers. The second will be the Q&A session where the panel of speakers, including Professor Daniel Blackwood, Deputy Head for Education and Student Affairs in MSc, will answer questions posed by members of the audience. Members of the audience may submit their questions in the webinar Q&A anytime and indicate if they would like a specific speaker to answer their question. To kick off today's webinar, let's invite Prof. Blackwood to give his opening address. Prof. Blackwood, please.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I will share screen. And presentation. Okay, welcome to the Department of Material Science and Engineering. So, hang on. Go away. Welcome to sorry, just had someone knocking at my door. Why come to NUS? Well, we rank in the top 8 in the universities in the world. We're also Singapore's flagship university. We're the only comprehensive university in Singapore. That's really quite important when you come here. It will allow you to actually make up a lot of links with people from, say, the law department, social sciences, and this network that you create when you're at university will be with you the rest of your life, because most of you will remain in Singapore. In fact, your networking time in university is probably as important as your university time. We've also got world-class facilities and laboratories. We are hosting 6 research centers of excellence funded by the National Research Foundation and the Ministry of Education. We have strong partnerships with industry and government. And not only are we strong in research, we also are doing a lot of enterprise work. So when you come here, you'll learn what it's really like to work at industry as well. And in terms of employability, well, NUS ranks top 10 in the world, and NUS Material Science and Engineering, we are actually the top ranked Material Science and Engineering department by employers in the whole of Asia. So obviously that also means within Singapore. Why CDE? Well, the engineering faculty is one of the top 8 in the university. With a fusion of 2 top schools, the Faculty of Engineering and the School of Design and Environmental. That means we've actually able to give you a wider curriculum, a more broader choice of subjects. And as that I can go on, we have flexibility and diversity in what we actually teach you. We've got a very good common curriculum, which all engineering students take in their first 2 years. We use a lot of problem-based teaching. That means we actually show you why you need to learn this. It's not just going to be theory for the sake of theory. You actually will learn why you need to learn these fundamental things. We also have a lot of dedicated research centers. We're home to 13 world-leading centers. And there's a whole host of actual programs that we have offering, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. So what is material science and engineering? Hopefully that's what you're going to come to NUS to study. What as the name implies, it's a mixture of science, things like physics, chemistry, biology, but also an applied part, the engineering. So how we're actually going to use that science for something useful. We use it in the fields of energy, biomedical, soft robotics, to materials, displays, all sorts of things actually rely on materials. So why do at NUS? Well, we're a close-knitted community. We don't have a large cohort, so we have a very good student to staff ratio, and all the students will be assigned a mentor. This mentor is someone that they can talk to not only about academic problems, but also life problems. So we know young people have a number of issues. It's not easy being a youngster. So it's used to have a mentor, someone older, more experienced to talk to you. We've also got a very good gender balance in our course. We're not quite 50-50, but we're about 60-40. We're also the only place in Singapore where you could get to do your research project with a Nobel Prize winner. That's something unique about our department. I'll say a little bit more about it in a moment. We also have strong support for the undergrad student clubs. Right? For some reason, we've actually produced 3 world-class bowlers over the years in Department of Materials Science and Engineering. We've got very strong relationships between some research institutes on the department, as well as A-STAR and the Center for Quantum Technologies. Move on. A little bit about the history of the department. In 1991, I know that's before all of you were born, we formed as a program between physics and chemistry. So that shows our scientific background. And we became a full-fledged department in 1996, which was the year I arrived in Singapore, which just goes to show how old I'm getting. But then in the year 2005, the university decided, well, it shouldn't be just material science, it should actually have an application. So that's why we moved from being material science in the Faculty of Science to material science and engineering in the Faculty of Engineering. And then in 2022, the Faculty of Engineering merged with the School of Design and we became the College of Design and Engineering. A little bit more on our research. Every year, there are a list of highly cited researchers. So these are the top 1% people in the world of research. And there's 6,849 last year, of which 43 are in NUS. So that's around 7-8%. And that's really excellent. If you consider how many universities there are in the world, there's around 1,000 universities. So for us to have around 7% of the top researchers is really good. And within that, about 8% are actually from the Department of Materials Science and Engineering. And we're only a small department in the university. So again, it shows you that we are one of the top research departments in the university. I also said we're the only people who have got a Nobel Prize winner working with us. And he's been supported by the government and the university with a new research institute called the Institute for Functional Intelligent Materials. And between them, the government and the university have pumped in $200 million into this research institute. So that sort of tells you how important the government and the university sees material science is to the future of the nation. What will you do when you come here? Well, in the first few years, you'll do the core, which is predominantly across the whole of engineering, but you also will get a chance to specialize later on. We have 6 specializations, 6 at the moment. One is material science for renewable energy and sustainability. So that's things like solar energy, batteries, water. Water is a very important commodity in Singapore, where you're well aware that we're short of water. Another one is in nanostructured and nanotechnology. We then also have joined with the departments of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and biomedical engineering for a robotics specialization. So if you do the robotics specialization, you'll take courses from all 4 departments. You might think, what does materials got to do with robotics? Well, you need materials like actuators to give the robot a sense of touch so that it can pick up something, right? So that's one use of materials. Of course, the robot itself is actually got to be made out of materials as well. We then have one on functional intelligent materials, which is linked to the new research institute. There we actually are aiming to build materials from the bottom up. So you will design new materials. We also join with the biomedical materials department to have a specialization in biomedical materials. There you will do courses in materials and some courses from biomedical engineering. And then there's another specialization that we joined with electrical and computing engineering on microelectronics and quantum materials. You can see from the fact that we often combine with other departments that materials is not only important in our department, it's actually important in most of the other engineering departments. So when you leave here and get a job, you'll find that the material science and engineer is the person that often links many other engineers together. Right, we have top-notch research here. We not only teach you about the theory of materials, we also do a bit into entrepreneurship and innovation. Right? If you want to know what material to make something out of, you've got to know a little about the economics. Is how available is it, how expensive it is, and things like that. We do a lot of cutting-edge research, which will be some of the topics that you'll hear about in a moment. And we've also got very good contacts with industry and alumni. Then how will you actually use your time here, right? Well, your course will be made up of a number of parts. There will be the common core curriculum, which all engineers take. And then you have your material science and engineering built onto that. And onto that, maybe you will build one or two specializations, perhaps an energy specialization, and then maybe a minor, perhaps in economics, data engineering, entrepreneurship, or you could do a second major, perhaps innovation and design as a second major. And these are a few of the potential jobs that you might end up in, as I'll talk more about in a moment. You can do a double engineering degree with the business administration. You could also get onto the Duke NUS Bachelor of Medicine. We have a student presently on this program. You can do a double major in, say, innovation and design, or you can actually do a double major in any other engineering department. We just have a student who's doing a double major, one in material science and engineering, and his second major is in electrical and computing engineering. Okay. And NUS offers a whole range of minors. Okay, these are all technical minors, but if your heart wanted to, you could do a minor in music or a minor in Japanese. That's the great advantage of being at a comprehensive university rather than a purely technical one. You can follow your interests. There are other things like we have an accelerated program called the Engineering Scholars Program, where you will compress your 4-year degree into 3 years, and after that you'll do a 1-year master's at the end. So after your 4 years, you have a bachelor's and a master's degree. And under this, it not only comes with a scholarship, you get to stay on campus. You'll get priority if you want to go on the student exchange program or work at the NUS overseas colleges. So this is quite a competitive program to get on, but it's worth trying to get onto. Even if you're not on that, about half of our students get to go overseas during their 4 years with us during the student exchange program. We have a whole host of different countries that we're involved in. In fact, NUS is the only university that has exchanges with both Oxford and Cambridge in the UK, which is where I come from. So I would obviously encourage you to go there. We also have a number of overseas colleges around the world where you can be actually attached to a startup. So that's where you will learn a lot more about industry and how a startup works. And there are also summer and winter programs that we can put you in touch with as well. Our department is also coming up with its own study award. We will pay up to $20,000 each to top students who want to join our department. We will offer up to 6 of these scholarships per year. So these you can't hold 2 scholarships. So if you already have the eScholars Award, you cannot have this, but it extends the number of scholarships you can actually get to come to NUS. What about money? Well, this is shows you the salaries that our students are earning. It was just announced a few days ago, right? In the brackets, those are the salaries, average salaries for CDE, so other engineers. You can see that we're slightly above average, okay? But we're approximately the average. So some departments earn more than us, some departments and less. If I was to put NTUs in here, you'd find that our students typically earn about $100 a month more. Not an enormous amount, but it still helps. Where do our students go? Well, they sort of go everywhere. Materials are everywhere. We do have them go into the traditional materials areas like applied materials, Bosch, 3M, but they also go into the healthcare area, things like Bayer, P&G, Procter and Gamble. Some go into transport. They go to work for Keppel, SMRT. A growing area is actually the aerospace and defense industry, Bombardier, Rolls-Royce, ST Aerospace. Some go off to do further research in the A-Star Research Institutes. Some go off to Drone Island to work in the petrochemical industry. I just had a project and a student that's gone off to work for Nippon Paints, doing research into paints. A lot still go to the microelectronics and semiconductor industry, but there's also a number that go off to banking and the business area. They actually find that the analytical thinking skills that they learnt while they're with us in engineering are very useful for the banking and the business world. So your horizon is not just restricted to an engineering career if you come and see us. What you learnt will be useful wherever you decide to work. Okay, so we're actually at the end of our 4 seminar series, but you could also still scan the QR code. I believe that we've actually recorded them, so you could actually, if you've missed one, you could scan the QR code and go back and perhaps see one of the earlier events. I will then hand you back to Anna. Also on this QR code, we have somewhere, if you go here, you should be able to find out a little bit more about the scholarship. I will now hand you back to Anna. I will stop share.
Thank you, Prof. Blackwood, for sharing about our department and the opportunities available for students here. In today's webinar, we are fortunate to have with us 2 remarkable research scientists who will grant us a sneak peek into their work on biomedical materials. They are Professor Benjamin T. and Dr. Ung Wei Beng. Thank you so much for joining us today. First up, we would like to invite Prof. Benjamin T. Prof. Benjamin T. is an associate professor of MSE at NUS. He leads his research group, Sensors AI, to develop technologies at the cutting edge of material science, mechanics, electronics, and biology, with a focus on sensitive electronic materials that have tremendous potential to advance global healthcare technologies in an increasingly AI era. He obtained his PhD at Stanford University and was a Singapore-Stanford Biodesign Global Innovation Postdoctoral Fellow in 2014. He was an MIT TR35 Innovator in 2015 and was awarded the National Research Foundation Fellowship in 2017. In 2019, he was listed as World Economic Forum's Young Scientist of the Year. Prof. Benjamin T. was also featured by CNN International as one of their Tomorrow's Hero series, by Channel News Asia International in the ASEAN's Next Generation Leaders documentary, and by BBC World Service Radio and National Geographic TV. We are honored to have him here today to share with us how design, engineering, biology, and medicine are making significant impacts across the healthcare sector. Prof. Benjamin T., please.
A very good day to you. I'm Benjamin T. at the Material Science and Engineering Department, and I'm excited to talk to you about how tomorrow's medical technologies can be revolutionized with MSE or Material Science and Engineering. So I lead the Sensors.ai labs at the Material Science and Engineering Department in the College of Design and Engineering. So we work on several research topics that I think can play a role in the future of medical devices when it comes to integrating closely with human tissues or human cells. My group works on sensor materials, self-healing devices, neuro-inspired devices, and stretchable electronics. So why do we want to develop sensors? Well, let us talk about the largest sense organ in your body, right? Your skin. Now, this is a person that's completely blindfolded, but yet is able to perform at high speed slicing actions with a very sharp object. Now, please don't try this at home. What this person does is that he uses his sense of touch that provides him with the right sensory information and feedback to allow him to navigate the environment. And basically, your skin, by providing touch or tactile data, allows you to do everything you are currently doing, whether it's using your smartphone, doing your homework, playing sports, and so on. If you lose your sense of touch, the same task that you used to think is effortless becomes actually really challenging. Here's a volunteer that was asked to light a matchstick. Most of you would take less than 5 seconds to do this. But if I inject lidocaine into your skin tissues and basically stop the transmission of sensory information from your skin to the muscles, this same task becomes much more difficult. Now, this is the volunteer just moments after injecting lidocaine, which numbs the nerves and basically stops the tactile data from transmitting. Takes much longer, 5 times longer than before to light a matchstick. This is the same for robotics. In the future, if you expect robots to help us, whether it's performing surgery or doing tasks for us, the lack of touch makes them rather unintelligent when it comes to grasping objects. How can this be used in the future of medicine? Well, for example, in Singapore, every day there's 4 amputations due to diabetes. This means that when you lose hands or legs or toes or fingers, you also lose the sense of touch. And this actually severely impacts your quality of life. Worldwide, there's close to 57 million people suffering from one or two forms of amputations, whether it's due to health reasons or injuries like accidents. So if you get a replacement prosthetic hand that doesn't have the sense of touch, this makes your life much more difficult in terms of you doing a daily task, wearing things, making coffee, reading a book. All this becomes very challenging, which is why in the future of material science engineering for medicine, having the right kind of materials that behave like skin can provide a sense of data, tactile data to a prosthetic device becomes actually really important. In materials, what's most obvious to you as when you touch it is how hard or soft something is. We are very familiar with stiff objects or hard objects, and this can be measured on a scale on what we call Young's modulus, and the unit is pascals. So the stiffer the material, the higher the Young's modulus. Computers today, as we know it, are hard, and because they're made of silicon, which are hundreds of gigapascals. Your human nervous system actually is only several thousand pascals, sometimes even lower. Therefore, there's a huge difference between the hard materials that we're used to and the soft materials like human tissue and human skin. Human skin is somewhere in the middle, roughly about megapascals. So in order for us to interface electronics, make things intelligent, we probably would have to look at other kinds of materials that are soft, flexible, even stretchable, just like human skin. So along the development path of technology and computation, we have evolved computers in terms of how fast they can process data. Today, a smartwatch would have way more computing power than computers just 50 years ago, which has to take the size of an entire room. Besides computational power, we've also been exploring new materials that are soft, flexible, and can even be directly put on to human skin, even human tissue. Right? There's a very nice review article, and there's a picture shown here. Imagine a world where if you have, due to very unfortunate reasons, lose your hand or leg and need a replacement body part, then having such new forms of materials that can behave in mechanically very similar to human skin can augment the prosthetic device becomes quite important. In order to allow this to happen, we have also made advances in materials that directly connect into body tissues such as your brain or nervous system. There have been lots of exciting research done where we can develop very soft materials and soft systems that can interface with your nervous system, your brain, and your spinal cord tissues. And this allows us to essentially read and write data to your brain and your muscles. So very exciting. And here's one video that can show you what I mean. So this woman is actually has a condition which makes basically she's paralyzed from neck down. And in a fairly early experiments, scientists have implanted basically fairly stiff needles into the brain to record signals so that we can interpret what the patient is trying to do and translate that action to a robotic machine. So here you have the lady using only her brain signals coupled to a computer to manipulate, control a robotic arm, and eventually drink a sip of water from the bottle. This is very exciting indeed. And since this demonstration, there's just been tremendous progress in brain-machine interface, which is the materials that are required to read and write data to a human nervous system. Now, in order to make artificial skin, such as those I mentioned earlier on prosthetic devices, we probably want to look at, well, how does the human skin actually function? Here, I show a schematic that takes a look under your epidermis, or the top layer of your skin. Inside, you have several special cells, and these are special nerve endings that transmit mechanical data or signals to your muscles and your brain. It's actually part of a larger system where the nervous system transfers the data to your brain, which contains memory and other learned skills that allow you to thread a needle, write homework, read a book, and so on. What actually really happens under the skin is that the signals coming from the cells are actually in the form of what we call action potentials. You may have learned this in your biology class. When you actually have a stimuli, say when you hold a cup, the skin cells actually fires these kind of action potentials, and the patterns of these action potential tells how much force you're applying on an object. Turns out that you have a lot of skin cells that transmit this data. And what's remarkable is that the speed of these transmission is about 1,000 times a second. And this remains the same despite the very large numbers of sensors. So in our group, we wondered whether we can create technology that allows us to scale sensor systems just like human skin to hundreds of thousands or even millions of sensors. And we've basically developed a system that allows us to be much faster than this computer model. Most of you may not have ever even heard this sound. For those of you who do know this sound, this is actually how data was transmitted in the past over telephone wires, copper wires. Today, they run on fiber optics. So inspired by our nervous system, we developed a system that allows very high-speed data transmission. And this allows us to create over 1,000 times faster data transmission rates compared to human systems. And here's a video demonstration of how such a device could work. So we developed the sensor system, data is being transmitted, and we place the skin on a prosthetic hand. And here you can see this tomato is actually a real tomato because it's soft. Turns out this could be really important, not just for prosthetic devices. It could also make machines more intelligent, allow it to tell whether you're healthy or not. This is not dissimilar to how doctors actually use their fingertips for palpation to understand whether there could be a tumor or there's just something different about how your body feels. And this comes from years of training. Using this technology that we developed, we actually propose to make an artificial glove that is able to measure your eye pressure. And this actually won the international winner of the James Dyson Award in 2021. This was the first time in 17 years history that a Singapore team won it. And we have the James Dyson himself, as well as our Prime Minister, them demonstrated the machine, the system to them. This was quite exciting. Unfortunately, it was COVID, so we couldn't have mask off. But what I believe is that the future of medicine relies on really exciting advances in material science and engineering. And you learn many of these types of materials, how we test them, how we design them in MSE. Let me leave the talk with a video of a potential future where if you have, for whatever reasons, have to have a replacement arm or leg, how technology will be used. And this is actually a video from Alita Battle Angel. It was quite I thought was a very heartwarming movie of how actual person who unfortunately has to use prosthetic devices may benefit from many of the advances we are developing in MSE. With that, I'd like to thank all of you for your kind attention and also acknowledge all my group members and the support of the funding agencies to allow us to create future of technology for biomedicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Benjamin T., for that informative sharing. It is indeed remarkable how materials science plays such a pivotal role in the future of biomedical materials and healthcare. For our audience, do note that the Q&A session will be held towards the end, where the speakers will answer the questions that you submit. We would like to now introduce our next speaker for today, Dr. Ng Wei Bang. Dr. Ng is also an associate professor of MSc at NUS. With close to 2 decades of experience in both research and industry, Dr. Ng has specialized knowledge in biosensing, medical devices, and advanced medical materials. Previously, Dr. Ng served as a medical device regulator at the Health Science Authority in Singapore, contributing to regulatory affairs activities in several medical device companies. 4 years ago, Dr. Ng established a medtech startup dedicated to the research on anti-inflammatory biopolymers. The primary objective is to advance the development of biopolymer for use as an implant to mitigate post-operative adhesions. This innovative initiative earned Dr. Ng the 2020 Johnson & Johnson Innovation Award and an alumni of JLab Shanghai. We are honored to have him here with us to share more on the biomedical applications of biopolymers. Dr. Ng, please.
Right. Yes, thank you, Anna. I'm very excited to be here today to share my journey in the world of biomedical materials. Specifically, later on, I'll show some examples of the current research that I am pursuing in the polymeric materials domain. And I'm wearing a few hats today because me, myself, I'm a NUS MSc alumnus. Also a current faculty in the department and as well as a MedTech entrepreneurs. So I hope through this talk today, I'll be able to inject perhaps some interest in some of you to work, to pursue the same path as I've taken. And with that, I'm going to dive right into my slides. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry for the lag. Right. So just to bring a little bit of relations to how biomedical materials is related to what you have studied to the current audience here, who I believe you have studied chemistry and physics and biology. So essentially, materials are built from atoms, right? And then from the atoms, we start building into bigger size entities, your molecules. And then finally, you assemble your molecules into macro substances such as polymers, or it could be your alloys, or it could be your composites, or it could be your ceramics. So just to put everything into perspective, what you have learned before is really something that is going to be very useful for your future career if you do want to pursue in the biomedical regime. right? So if we talk about biomedical materials, we are really focusing ourselves looking at a specific group of materials that are, well, they can be natural materials or they can be materials that we have engineered, right? Because we are from the College of Design Engineering. So design and engineering is always at the core of our hearts, right? We want to engineer something into and improve versions, right? So we engineer materials so that it can interact with biological systems, with our bodies, of course, with the aim, right, to help patients and healthcare professionals. You know, as someone who is in the biomedical field, I believe the passion and the motivation is always to make the world a better place, right? To help our patients to live a better life, or to help them to overcome some of the, you know, the biomedical issues, the diseases, and not forgetting our healthcare professionals to make their job easier, right? Because by making their job easier, you are also making a huge impact to the patients, right? So the cause here is, I would say, very noble. Just to cite some of the examples of how materials are being used in a few examples of biomedical applications. I'm sure you know that if we want, imagine if you want to put anything foreign into our bodies, right? First of all, you don't want to have any reactions to that. So biocompatibility of the materials is something that's very crucial. You don't want to have let's say a cardiovascular stent that's put into your heart and then it causes adverse events leading to death, or you know, anything that is detrimental, right, to the health of the patients. So biocompatibilities, mechanical properties, you don't want stents to break inside your bodies. That would be terrible, right? So knowing the materials properties and how to control them in a way that's able to achieve the intended use, that is what MSc, Material Science and Engineering, will equip you with that kind of knowledge, as well as a lot of materials nowadays that's been put inside the bodies. They are designed to be biodegradable so that you don't have to go through a second surgery to remove it, right? And that is again related to materials properties, how you can choose the appropriate type of materials and to degrade within the appropriate timeline. You don't want it to degrade too fast. You also do not want it to degrade too late, right? So how to control the materials properties from the atomic scale or from the molecular scale so that it can degrade at the right time, that requires MSc Material Science knowledge, right? So I have given some examples down here, like surface roughness, you know, properties. If you are looking at, you know, cell adhesions or drug loading, so that will be something that's again related to material science, because you will learn how to functionalize the surface of materials. You will learn how to create, for example, microstructures on the materials that is going to help in your intended use, right? And anyway, the list here is not exhaustive. So there are so many examples that I could not just, you know, list everything down within one slide and also within this time that's given to me today. But I'm sure, you know, you'll be able to find a lot of amazing things that materials can actually make an impact in the medical devices that we use nowadays, even for drugs, right? Even for drugs that's approved by US FDA and is already, you know, currently being prescribed to patients. Many of these drugs, they are able to release the active ingredients over a sustained period of time. It's related to materials as well, because you need to design an encapsulation materials that's able to slowly release the drugs over time. And that's again related to material science and engineering. Okay, next. Yeah, so these are some very concrete examples of some of the devices that personally I have handled before myself, whether during my days at the health science authorities or during my days at the manufacturers of medical devices, because I used to work in a company that makes drug-eluting cardiovascular stents. And as you know, heart diseases is, climbing in terms of the statistics everywhere, not just in Singapore, but globally. And there are a lot of companies that are, making medical advances in very, high-tech cardiovascular stents. Some of it even has a balloon to actually expand the arteries, right, in your heart so that you do not get blockage. You see nowadays we have so many people that's dying of heart diseases, right? So this is really a very important and upcoming clinical specialties. So I've illustrated here how materials can be found in these very important medical devices nowadays. You can see from the table that is right on the bottom left-hand side, right? You can see in the stent material, stent is really something that looks like a web, right? A metallic web that once you put into the artery, you are able to expand it using a balloon, right? You blow air inside the balloon and the balloon will expand and therefore expand the web, the metallic web. So these stent materials are typically metallic materials, usually made of cobalt, chromium, and as a form of alloy, right? So you study what is alloy before, you know that this is a special class of materials, and again, you will learn that with more details in your material science and engineering modules if you were to join us. Stent coating, we are using polymeric materials. We call it PLA, which is a very commonly used biocompatible materials that's used nowadays. You will learn about why is this biocompatible in terms of cytotoxicities, in terms of irritations, in terms of sensitizations. So these are the materials properties that will be probably part of the modules under biomaterials if you were to take that modules. And so what I really want to show here is within just the stand itself, there are so many different kinds of materials that can be found in the design of the stand. You see metals, you see polymers in this example. There's also a shape memory alloy that you can see here, right? The nitinol, which has a hydrophilic coating, which is very important because you want your guide wire to be able to slide very smoothly, right? When the surgeons perform the bypass, right? So hydrophilic coating, which is essentially made of materials again, right? So again, that shows how relevant material science is being used in the medical field. In the next example here, I want to go on to another medical devices that are quite commonly used nowadays because people fell, right? Especially the elderly, when they fell, they will need to, undergo implant surgery. So there are many types of implants that's being used and approved for use nowadays. We have the metal on polyethylenes. Metal, polyethylene, again, these are materials, and we have different versions of that. We have metal on metals, which are again made of very expensive materials, titanium, chromium, cobalt, stainless steel, or even a combination of this. But right now, nowadays, we are also moving into ceramic. Ceramic on ceramic. Again, ceramic is a typical categories of materials, simply due to the fact that it is more durable. Because if you have learned MSE, you will have know that ceramic is actually a very tough material, right? It is very durable, therefore, and it is more suitable for patients who are typically younger, who tend to have a more hyperactive lifestyle. However, there are limitations to every type of materials that you have that you're going to use. Ceramic itself is more vulnerable to fracture and breaking. So, if you are equipped with the material science engineering knowledge, you will be able to make a better choice in terms of what would be the best implants that are suitable for your patients, right? And again, that illustrates how material science and engineering knowledge can have a very important role in making clinical decisions, right, for your patients. So in this example here, we see that, again, there is a whole wide range of materials that's being used. We see metals that's being used. We see the HA, right? Hydroxyapatite, which is a very common biomaterial, ceramic-based material that's being used, as well as polymers. So again, this is a real-life examples of how much materials has been used nowadays in actual medical devices, right? Next, the The rest of the time, I'm going to be talking more about my current research projects in two areas. Right, and the first project or research area is collaborating with Seoul National University in Korea as well as J&J. And we're looking at, you probably can already tell from the brief introduction just now that my main area of research or topic is on modulations of inflammations using materials. And this is very important looking at the area of post-surgical adhesions. Post-surgical adhesions refers to clinical situations where the body heals after surgery. When the body heals, the tissues are not going to be aware where to stick and where not to stick, right? So for example, if you were to go for a surgery to remove part of your colons, for example, due to colon cancer. So the part of the colon that has been traumatized, right, or injured during the healing process, the tissue of the colon is not going to know that it shouldn't stick to the walls of your abdominals, right? So it will just stick everywhere. So what happens is when the body heals, the colon get stick onto the walls of the abdominals, and you start to feel pain. Patients start to feel pain because it is not supposed to be stick together, right? So there is a chronic pain, and in serious cases, you will have small bowel obstructions, meaning that when you eat a food, your food is not able to go through a smooth GI tract all the way to excretion from the bodies. So you really need to be, re-hospitalized and then undergoing all sorts of complications. And for ladies who went through the C-sections, adhesion can also occur to the extent of our mothers feeling pain right after giving birth, and it could also adhesions could also affect the fallopian tubing, such that it will affect this sterilization process, right? You studied before in the biology how your egg cells, right, your ovum, your sperm cells, they have to travel to meet each other for sterilization. But if let's say your fallopian tube has been blocked because of adhesions, then it will prevent the sterilization. So adhesions can have a lot of clinical complications for a lot of clinical specialties, ranging all the way from gynecology, from general surgeries, and it is reported as up to 93% of patients will develop adhesions following any kind of procedures. And these are real live pictures that is showing the adhesions as happening in the body of the patients after they have healed. And for this, we are specifically looking at thyroidectomy, which is essentially a minimally invasive surgery to remove thyroid cancer, right? Because nowadays, open surgeries, the recovery time is longer. So we always would like to go for minimally invasive surgery so as to shorten the recovery time. And in a lot of thyroid cancers, you can actually go for thyroidectomy, which is a minimally invasive surgery. But the problem with this is patients still experience post-surgical adhesions, which means the sticking of the tissues in the throat, right, after the surgery, again leads to chronic pain, movement disorders. And in some cases, I can see in the pictures here, these lady patients, they do develop incision scar, right? Which is not very nice to see. And it is very important because a lot of thyroid cancer patients, they do have a very long period of survival rate. So if this patient, imagine after the surgery, this patient is to live for another at least 20 years. Imagine this adhesion is going to be there for the patients over the 20 years of lifespan. The patient is going to experience pain over 20 years, and that is not a very nice thing, right? So we need to be able to provide a solutions to overcome that. And we are working on using material science and engineering to help these patients by using a kind of biocompatible materials that can be put within the thyroids, the neck regions after the surgery, so that to prevent adhesions during the healing, right? And this is especially more important because currently there is no US FDA approved adhesion barrier that's out in the market, simply because it is very challenging, because usually for the thyroid regions, whatever materials that you put in, it tends to slide down, right? Because it doesn't tend to stick onto the tissues very well. So if the materials were to slide down, then there is no physical barrier between the walls of the neck as well as the injured tissues, and therefore it is very difficult to prevent adhesions. So now we are proposing to use a material that's very unique, using a natural biopolymers that is harvested from plants actually. And this is by itself a biomaterial, right? It is called a sporopollenin, which is by itself, there's an inherent properties that's able to modulate inflammation, because ultimately when we look at the root cause of adhesions, it's really because of dysregulated inflammation pathway. Because when the body undergoes too much inflammation, there will be a too much excessive tissue fibroblast that has grown, and therefore that leads to the tissue adhesions. So if you are able to address the root cause by modulating the pathway of inflammations, we are not saying that we are totally taking away the inflammation, because inflammation is still required as part of the healing process. But what we are saying here is we are able to modulate the inflammation to titrate it in a way that it is not over too much. It's not too excessive as to cause adhesions, but the body will still heal. So you can see here, essentially we use very basic materials processing techniques, which you will learn in your MSE course. Here we're using a solution casting techniques to ultimately, make a film. Hydrocolloid film, which also consists of your PEG, CMC, dextran. PEG stands for another polymers, which is polyethylene glycol. CMC stands for another polymers, which is the carboxymethyl cellulose. And dextran is actually sugar, right? And that's the reason why these ingredients are there for reasons. So these materials can be easily rolled into a size that's enough to fit inside the keyhole, because minimally invasive surgery, the keyhole is very small. So your materials has to be mechanically robust enough to be, inserted through the keyhole, but yet able to stick onto the tissues and not gliding downwards, right? So what is the reason for that? Is the very interesting microstructures of the materials. You can see that these materials that is being harvested from natural plants, they have this natural spikes, right? If you look at SEM, SEM, by the way, stands for scanning electron microscope, which you will learn as well as part of your MSc materials characterization course. It has this spiky, decorations on the surface of the materials that enables it to stick onto your tissues. And that works very well, because what we want is the material to stay in place, right? Stick well to the tissue so that it will not glide downwards at when the patients were to lift up their heads. And therefore, during the healing process, it is able to prevent the tissues from sticking together, because there's a physical barrier. So that's the basic mechanism of how it works to help in thyroid patients. If you are interested in the anti-inflammation mechanisms, this is a huge paragraph, but basically, in a nutshell, we are using a very simple physical phenomena, which is opposite attracts, right? So in the anti-inflammatory mechanism, there are different phases of the pathway, and we are essentially looking at the central region, which is the blockage. Blockage is such a strategy during the body's healing process. The body, as a natural response, they will start to starts to generate a lot of immune cells, right? And how the immune cells get attached to the tissue is really through receptors, right? If you have studied biology, you know that there has to be specific receptors in order to attach to the immune cells. So the strategy that we're using here is to leverage on the negative charge of this biomaterial, which is anionic. Anionic means it is negative charge, right? So anionic sporopollenin, it will get attracted due to opposite charge attract to the L-selectin, which is receptors that's on the immune cells, and therefore it provides a blockage strategies, as well as to attach to the positive side of the P-selectin, again, to prevent the immune cells from attaching to the tissues. So this is what we meant by a blocking strategy in the inflammation pathway. So by using these strategies, we are able to use material science to modulate inflammations. And that is also very beneficial in comparison to using drugs. Because if you were to take an anti-inflammation drugs, you take it into your bodies, it's going to have a whole body effect. It's going to affect everywhere inside your body, which is called a systemic effect. But if you were to use materials to modulate the inflammation, it will only affect the area of the materials where the material is being put in. So it's a localized effect. So generally using this approach is much better as compared to taking anti-inflammation drugs, because it is not affecting your whole body, but it is only addressing the area of inflammation only, which is a localized effect, right? So this is actually my main area of interest in my research. And this is really the core technologies that we are developing for this medical device. So we have done blinded animal comparison studies, comparing the commercial products from Baxter, which is a huge MNCs in medical devices, as well as from J&J. J&J also have currently commercial products called interseed adhesion barriers, and we compare the efficacies, the severities of the adhesion that's formed. So we use rats, right? So we open up the rats and we purposely cause some injury to the tissues. And then we put in the materials that is indicated by the yellow patch here. So we have 4 groups of animals, right? We have the control. We have the one that is using J&J, interseed, and the Baxter, and the sporopollenin. And each group will have 10 rats, and it's all blinded, so that is a fair comparison studies. The bar chart here, you should be looking at the yellow bar chart, which is essentially the one that is representing the sporopollenin. So if you look at the adhesion severity score, the sporopollenin is scoring the highest in terms of 0 adhesions, which is, you can see here, right? After 3 weeks, we open up the rats, the body, inside the body of the rats, the injury has healed, but there is no adhesions at all. But if you look at the control group, the rats that's far on the left-hand side, there is such a severe adhesion. You can see the walls of the abdominals of the rats is sticking so much to the, in this case, that's a cesium of the rats. In the second case, you do see a lot of adhesions indicated by the red arrow in the J&J products. And Baxter slightly better, but that's still an attachment. So that shows, by using a materials, a wise material choice, you are able to improve the clinical outcomes of surgeries in preventing the adhesions. Second project is again on using biopolymers, and this is collaborating with Tan Tock Seng Hospital in Singapore with fundings from our good friends A-Star Enterprise Singapore. And this is looking at, again, using biopolymers for organ retractions and hemostasis. So what is organ retraction? In minimally invasive surgery, very often you need to cut, right? You need to cut your organs, but you are afraid of during the cutting, you injured the neighboring organs. So usually what they do is you have to use a metal retractors. In this case, in a pancreatic surgery, you actually lift away the hepatic artery, so that when you cut the pancreas, it does not accidentally cut the hepatic arteries, which is represented by the blue. But the problem with metal retractor is that it is made of metal, so it can sometimes quite easily cause additional injuries to the organs because of sharp edges. And also using a metal retractors means you need to have another port. right? You need to insert and open up another keyhole surgery, a keyhole port in the surgeons, which is not a good thing, right? So what we're trying to do here is to use material science, right? We put in a sponge that is that has a very high compressive strength, so that it's able to lift away the organs, and at the same time able to absorb the blood, because the surgeons need to have a clean operative field, right? Because in a minimally invasive surgeries, what they can see is very narrow, right? So it is very important to clean, to absorb away the blood so that the surgeons can see what they are operating very clearly. So we have done some trial studies using pig's organs, pig's liver, using a materials that's made of cellulose and sporopollenin. And this really goes to show that even after the absorptions of blood, right, you can see the picture in the right in the middle, the sporopollenin sponge, even after they absorb the blood, this is using simulated blood, by the way, it's not the real blood, it is still able to lift up the pig's liver, right, and to give that kind of tunneling space for the surgeons to work on. But another issue with this is it is red in color. So for the surgeons, right, everything is red during the surgery, and it's very difficult to tell the difference whether which part is the tissue, which part is the sponge. So we did some material surface modification such that the sponge will still appear as different colors after it has absorbed the blood. So we did some experimental, and I'm going to show some video here. So this video is showing a sponge that is without the hydrophobic treatment on the surface, so that everywhere is red color, right, after it absorbed the simulated blood. You can see that it's able to absorb the blood quite efficiently, but the issue is the surface appears red color. All right, so I'm going to show the next video, which is using a sponge that has a hydrophobic treatment to the material surface. It has this is in a cube shape, right? So it has 6 phases. So 5 of the surfaces we have treated it with a special hydrophobic treatment such that it appears more like yellowish color. I'm going to just forward a little bit. You can see that in comparison to the first sponge, it is still able to show a pretty distinctive yellowish color after absorptions of blood. And the third video here is I want to show another materials composition that can expand so much after the absorptions of blood, because this is important because keyhole surgery means the keyhole is very small. So your materials has to be originally very small size to fit through the keyhole, but once it goes into the bodies, it will start to swell after absorptions of the blood. So again, this is by control of the materials properties that enables you to achieve that. So next, I'm going to show a clinical trial, right, using the sponge materials in the real human bodies, right? So we are making it into a larger piece of sponge. So the surgeons here is going to insert through the keyhole on the patients. These are the ports, right, that I was talking about. So the materials will be inserted inside through the keyhole port. So this is now going into the abdominal regions of the patients. So because there's currently no blood, so the surgeon is next going to spray on some saline to make it expand. Just forward slightly. So now it's going to spray on some saline to make the sponge swell, because the sponge has to be very small in the first place in order to go in through the port. But after going through into the port, we want the materials to be bigger size so that it can help to protect the patients. So it is purposely, irrigated with the saline so that it expands. So again, this is by control of the materials compositions and the materials properties that is able to achieve this kind of behavior. So you can see that it has slowly expanded and been able to cover some of the organs that we do not want to accidentally damage or injured during the surgery. Right, so it has grown to a pretty big piece of sponge materials. I think I'll just fast forward a little bit so that I don't waste time. So next, I'm going to show in the next video, right? So this is essentially the sponge material, which has gone a little bit red color because of the blood. But essentially it is able to have the kind of dimensions that's able to cover the organs or to retract the organs that we want to protect during the cutting of the cancer cells, right? So there's a lot of tumor cells that you see above, which is in a yellowish jelly substances, a lot of cancer cells, tumor cells down there that the surgeon is now later on will be cutting it away. And during the cutting process, because of the protection by the sponge, the underlying organs will be protected. So essentially, that's how the sponge is being used to improve the benefits of the patients. Oops, okay. So right to the very last slide of my presentations today. So what I want to say is through these few examples, I want to again bring across that, you know, material science and engineering does plays a very important role in the advancement of medicine. So after this, I hope you can seriously think about, you know, pursuing MSc and to join us in making a real impact on the life of patients. With that, thank you, and I'll pass you over to Anna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ung, for the interesting sharing and for showing us the important role material science play in the advancement of medicine. We have now come to the end of today's session, as well as the end of the webinar series. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the speakers for taking time out of their busy schedule to attend today's session. We thank our audience for your participation and hope that this session and the webinar series has been fruitful for you. If you wish to view the recordings for the previous sessions, you may scan the QR code shown on the screen. Please also take a moment to complete the short survey, which will appear right as you exit the webinar. Do also scan this QR code on the left to join our MSE Discord or the one on the right to find out more and contact us if you have any further questions. Thank you, and we hope to see you in MSE at NUS.
Yes. Okay, goodbye, and I hope to see you in August.